Set your project directory to a folder called Dynamics inside the Minitoots2 folder. Click OK. Let's go to File. We're going to set up our scene. Go into the Objects folder and locate grid.obj. This is a very simple grid here. I'm going to set the draw mode of this grid to edges. I've assigned two materials to this grid. The first material is a holder material. The second material is just called default. It's whatever Wings had put on originally. So we're going to talk about soft-body dynamics. Let's go into Setup, and under the Effects tab, select Soft-Body Dynamics. While the grid object is highlighted, add that to the grid. Soft-body dynamics inside Messiah are incredibly fast. You can actually test most of the settings in real time. There's one feature that has a lot of trouble inside most programs, and especially Messiah: the collision detection. So you go into Soft-Body Dynamics box, let's expand the window, take a look at Collision Effects and Objects tab. Ignore this tab completely. We're going to take a different route. Let's go back to Soft-Body Dynamics. We have all these fun settings. We'll play with them soon. Obstruct, Shear, and Flex. We're going to leave everything at its default and run over to Soft Mapping. This is where you apply the effect to different parts of your mesh. The surface is default, and the same thing is default on the object. Unfortunately, my modeler, which is Wings 3D, uses a lowercase d for the default instead of a capital. So we hit into Animate. This is a textbook example of soft-body dynamics. Just hit play, and it'll calculate through. It'll zip back to the beginning and run the calculation again. Let's just set this to 150 frames and let it finish calculating. Now this is calculated in real time, and it doesn't require any type of parenting. You can shift it around on X, Y, and Z. It's all calculated in the world. Just reset these channels. So the next part of the equation is doing collision detection. Since we're taking a different route and ignoring the collision detection that Messiah has, we're going to use Spherize. Let's go back into Setup, make sure our grid is highlighted, the Effects tab, and locate Spherize in the pull-down menu. Let's add the Spherize effect to our grid. Spherize shows up as a null, and then the Spherize effect. We'll just leave that at default. We'll just move this null down and over a little bit. Now right now we have soft-body dynamics and Spherize being applied, and it'll apply from the top down. That means it'll calculate all of the dynamics, and anything that bumps into the Spherize effect will get pushed out from the center of the null. If we go back into Animate and take a look at this, you can see that it shows up kind of not how we wanted it to, but it's exactly how the effect plays through. See that it stretches through. It's being applied afterwards. So go back into soft-body dynamics, and under here, let's expand the window again. Check Use Previous Deformations. What we get now is an effect that behaves like a collision detection, but it's not really doing the collision detection that we'd expect. What it's doing is it's checking all of the effects first, moving the points to those effects, and then applying its soft-body deformations. In this case, it just appears as if Spherize is pushing things back away from itself. So it is behaving like a collision detection, but we're not getting any jumpiness. It's completely procedural. From here we can now test the different cuts of cloth, as you might say. Let's continue running the simulation. We'll let it drape. Go back to soft-body dynamics and take a look at some of our settings. Struct, Shear, and Flex affect how well the cloth folds on itself. If you change any one of these, the cloth will be different, of course. The two numbers in the fields next to it are the amount of stretch variance. That is, the first one is the maximum amount it can stretch. In this case, 110%, 1.1. It will compress 0.9, or 90%. You can set both of these to 1, and you get a really stiff mesh. I like to keep them at 1 because I don't really like my mesh stretching around at all. Now there's easier ways to make settings on this, in which case we can just deactivate Shear and Flex and we get a kind of a silk pattern. Struct only affects the X and Y, that is all of the squares. Shear affects how the squares move back and forth between each other, and flex is how much they bend. So you can see them bending just like regular cloth. So you can actually deactivate some of these and then get some very interesting effects. If we just do nothing but shear, we get kind of an accordion effect like taffeta. Turn on struct and shear, we get something a little more like cotton, and just activate flex, we get something a little stiffer like canvas. The other thing you can do to affect the stiffness of your cloth is change the stretch corrections. If you change this to 1, what you get is a very limp, stretchy cloth that drapes a lot more. Stretch corrections just mean that Messiah is going to try that many times to move it back to its original position when it was calculated. Set it at 5, the cloth seems to behave a bit stiffer. Time subsamples also help out if you're having a fast moving cloth. If you set this to 10, it will calculate things 10 times. And remember, both of these are multipliers. That means it's doing 5 stretch corrections 10 times per frame. So it gets a lot slower. If you set things from 1 to 1, you get kind of a membrane effect. And it drapes over itself, and sometimes it buckles up and doesn't look very nice. But it is the fastest, and it will run fastest on the slowest machines. I like to set my time subsamples to 2 or more, and stretch corrections to 5. That way I can get the best of both worlds. So if you're affecting anything, the simplest way to change the cloth attributes is just disable these. Hold affects how much the object tries to maintain its shape. If I turn this on, it goes right back to its grid shape. Now I can have all of these apply at once. If I have, say, a very, very baggy gullet on a character, I can set hold to 1 and let it drape slightly over the top. I'll use my spherize effects, which I can also apply meta effectors to create a different shape that slides over itself. You can also set these to 0.01 so we get just barely enough hold, which also affects the stiffness of your cloth. So the bottom line is, apply your spherize effect after your soft body dynamics in the list, and make sure to use previous deformations. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to go File. We're going to save this Messiah scene as into the Scenes folder, SoftBodyDynamics1. Save.